Okay, we're going to start over. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the school committee meeting of April 1st, 2020. This meeting is being held fully remote in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, big G, small l, small c, 30A, section 20, as we all know it. Again, this is our second meeting that we've done this way. So if it gets a little bit in a mess, bear with us because we're trying to do the very best that we can. This meeting is also being broadcast for the people who are looking at it on cable. They can only hear it audio. They can't see us. But for the members, we can see each other. So I'd ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, this meeting is also being recorded for use at a later date by Whitman-Hanson Community Access. I'm hoping that people that are watching it on their community access at home can hear the audio. Again, you will not see anything other than, you will not see us, you will just hear the audio. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by
Dan.
Dan Cullity. Seconded by
I'll second Rob O'Brien.
Rob O'Brien. We have to do a roll call vote. We do not have to vote to do a roll call vote. It's already been assumed on this governor's provisions of suspending meetings. So, Mr.
Yes.
Jones. Mr. Small.
Yes. Mr. Small says yes.
Mr. Boyce. Mr. Boyce. Unmute yourself, Mr. Boyce. Mr. Boyce? Okay. Ms.
Yes.
Spires? Ally Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven? Mr.
Yes.
Cullity? Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Chris Howard? Bob Hayes, yes. Okay. Superintendent's report. School closure updates.
So, as you know, we're closed, and we're going to roll out a remote learning plan tomorrow that will take effect next Monday. We are closed through May 4th, per the governor. So we've met as a leadership team, principals, curriculum folks, technology operations, as far as what that learning environment is going to look like. First and foremost, a couple of folks have already asked about Good Friday and April break. We will be off from school on Good Friday. April break, we're looking for guidance from the Commissioner of Education right now, from DESE, to see if we do decide to work through April vacation, whether or not those days will be counted as school days towards the end of the year. A lot of discussion on the superintendent's email site today. The commissioner will come out with guidance. Right now, it's in our school calendar as the school committee approved April vacation in a couple of weeks. If we decide to move and work through April vacation, we would have to speak to the union first and foremost, as it's in their contract. We already had a conversation to lay out some groundwork about what that would look like. But I will report out to the committee either in an email or by the next school committee meeting what the commissioner's guidance is on April vacation. Food services will be doing a different procedure starting next Monday. We've been inundated, and it's a good thing. We're supporting and helping people. But Nadine Doucette is rolling out an app right now that parents will be able to sign up for food services. Currently, we're delivering meals And that's become problematic because the amount of meals that we're delivering. Starting next week, we will be doing pickups in the high school bus loops on Mondays and Thursdays. Kids, families will have food for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at those two pickups. Families, if they need deliveries, it'll be available for deliveries, but we can't physically deliver to every person that needs or that wants that right now. It's really on a need basis. We are over 100, maybe 120 families that we're providing meals for right now. Chromebooks, we've distributed, George, close to 400 Chromebooks?
About 460
Chromebooks to our students. We will have one more rollout of Chromebooks, which is next Tuesday. Parents have to ask for that Chromebook by Friday at noon to give our technology staff an opportunity to prepare those. And that'll be the last distribution. We're really looking at it as a health and safety issue. The least amount of traffic we can have for our technology folks in the buildings and with contact with the community, the better off we are. So the last distribution will be next Tuesday from 10 to 2. I will tell the committees, if you've seen it on social media, if you've heard some comments, Ernie and the tech department, Olive Operations really combined with George to put together a plan that was very professional as far as 3 different checkpoints. Our guys were in masks and gloves, and it was a very smooth operation to distribute those 400 Chromebooks. So I just want to thank George, Operations, Ernie, Steve, all the guys in technology for rolling it out. It was just very smooth. As far as the remote learning plans, the health and physical and emotional welfare of our kids is our priority. So it's going to look different at all levels. This isn't going to be one-to-one teaching. This isn't going to be an online class for our kids. And I know some of our parents are kind of panicked that their kids are going to have to sit in front of a computer for an hour and a half like their college kid is taking an online class. This is very different. Teachers are going to use a variety of check-ins with their students, K-8 especially. We're really not looking at presenting new material for them. We're not going to be grading K-8 students. So parents shouldn't worry about their kid and their matriculation to next year. We're really looking at reviewing information that was previously presented and gaining a level of mastery with our students through engagement. Teachers will be reaching out to those kids in a variety of ways, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Google Classroom, whether it be phone calls and emails and blogs and different things like that. And really what we're going to try to pinpoint are kids that aren't engaging and reach out to them and their parents, either through the teacher, through a counselor, through the assistant principal, or the secretary of that building to make sure everything's going okay at home or if they need something. K-9 through 12 might be a little bit different. We might be adding some new material depending upon the equity of the classroom and if all kids are able to access the curriculum. And we're going to look at a credit, no credit for the rest of the year. It shouldn't be a stressful time for students or for parents, pre-K to 12 in the district. Still working at trying to find out how we can roll out some sort of ceremonies and some sort of end of the year activities for kids. But that's a big question mark right now, depending upon where the governor is at with our health and safety. But really trying to make sure our kids are connected with their teachers. Right now, I think our teachers are doing a hell of a job doing what they are and reaching out. And really the basic premise of what the commissioner rolled out, we didn't really change the guidelines from the commissioner. Pre-K to 5, we were looking at 2 to 2.5 hours of engagement from students. That doesn't mean they have to be in front of their computer for 2.5 hours a day. The teacher might give them a learning activity to go out and do something out in the yard. They might be looking at a recipe, but they're looking at 2 to 2.5 hours pre-K, 2.5 hours in middle school, and about 3 hours of contact time or education time at the high school. And again, and it doesn't mean, about a half hour per subject at the high school. Kids take 6 classes, they're going to get about a half hour of stuff to do. I'm going to roll out a letter tomorrow, probably to the community, but by 1:30 or 2, with a general overview of this remote learning plan. Then each individual principal is going to follow up at their grade level of what that plan is going to be for elementary, middle, and high, with the goal of that planning or that plan being implemented starting Monday. I've already gotten feedback from quite a few parents saying teachers are already checking in with their kids. Some teachers are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all means of social media, Google Classroom, everything that we have as far as connections with kids. What we really don't want to do is lose the relationship that we have between teacher and student of this time away. Hopefully we can come back in May. If we can't come back in May, hope is to come back in June. What I really like to have is some closure for our teachers and students and not roll into next September without any type of contact. But again, that's up to our Department of Public Health, the governor, the commissioner of education, and really the national government right now, the federal government at this point. So that's what I have for closures. If anybody has any questions.
Questions, anyone? No one?
Okay.
No one has any questions. Mike, you're muted. Dawn, you're muted, it looks like.
No, thank you, Jeff.
Christian?
Thank everyone out.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. I'm going to roll right into Director of Business Development. We had 3 candidates we were looking at. One candidate has already accepted a position. George and I are going to Zoom next Thursday. And John, next Thursday, if any committee member wants to join that Zoom, just email me and I'll email you the times. We haven't set up any time yet. But we have 2 candidates for that we're going to look at. Hopefully one will be a hit for us, but I'm looking at just interviewing the 2 that we have right now. And again, if any committee member wants to be involved in that, just email me and I'll send you the times.
Everybody okay with that? Any questions?
Sounds good.
What, Robbie? Okay. Next up is the FY 2021 budget and local assessments. Today, there was a webinar, I guess would be a perfect term for what went on with DESE. Jay Sullivan, who's the director, and Miss Marshall, I think her first name's Maureen, actually. And they talked about the up and coming budgets for school districts, whether they were single towns or also for regional districts. And I'll briefly go down some. I'll briefly get down my notes. I know that I believe John Tuffy, George, Jeff, I think Fred was on that. Also listening. Fred, if you can hear me, shake your head because I can see you. I have everyone muted because it's ringing back. And then when we get to open time, if you want to raise your hand so I can see you. Poor Mr. Cullity's on the other screen, I think. Let me. Yeah, now I can see you. And I'll just continue on down the notes. If anybody has anything, try to put your hand up so I can see it. Mike, are you already raising your hand? Fred, are you raising your hand? I can see it. Okay. Shaking his head.
Well, if you,
From what we start,
what I was going to say is if you can give the recap, if I have anything to add, I'll raise my hand at that point.
okay. Jay Sullivan is the director, and he said, you might as well consider my name as Jay Stay Tuned Sullivan, because that's how rapidly things are changing with what's going on. The discussion was of an hour and approximately 15 minutes. And they really, everything is so fluid right now that they're not 100% sure what's going to happen, and they're not committing to everything or anything. They're talking about 1/12 budgets for many school districts because of the budgeting process. The revenue for the state and their projections that they made originally are obviously way off, and the gloves are off on their projections because of this situation that we have. Their revenue is way off, and they're not sure how that's going to go. They're not even sure that they said the state may have a budget, the state may not have a budget. with what's going on, depending on the length of this particular crisis that we're in at the particular time. So everything is pretty much up in the air. They talked about towns having 1/12 budgets being a problem. If you do, you'll be going off your fiscal 2020. They talked about E&D getting depleted because of unknowns such as cleaning schools, problems that everybody's having. And this is throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They didn't speak specifically and talk about a Whitman-Hanson situation or a Dayton Rehoboth situation or a Weymouth School District situation, whether it was regional or single town. They said that everybody's in the same situation. What your local contributions were going to be, assessment issues, status. They were waiting on the legislature. They said the legislature may even change the methods of assessment. They're not 100% sure. Again, they wouldn't commit to anything. They said, but that could be in the wings of how the assessments are going to be done to the towns, and why it's up in the air is because the unknown factor is how long this problem is going to go on. They're looking for directions and processes and change. Budgets should be approved in July or August. Town meetings could be extended as far as into the fall. I know that Hanson usually has an October town meeting. I think Whitman only does it if something is special going on. But they're saying we're not talking about Whitman-Hanson again. They didn't talk about Whitman-Hanson specifically. They talked about the hearing from towns that may not have town meetings till fall. The hearing about from towns that the town itself is going to be on a 1/12 budget. Level services are going to be maybe somewhat impossible or difficult to keep at. As he said, stay tuned. That's his new middle name. He was put a little levity into it to try to take the severity off the subject. Under the 1/12 budget, you would use the statutory method. He said some districts are going to find it hard to use the stat method. They're looking for a legal answer. Use what you have used in the past if that can be done. They're not encouraging any, they had nothing to say specific to put their finger on do's or don'ts. What if the towns don't have town meetings, and what if a town doesn't approve, if the school committee sets a budget and then it goes to town meeting and it doesn't get approved, the school committee can reconsider that budget and they have 30 days to come back and have it voted on again. That could go on a few times. That's where you come up with the super town meeting. July 1st, the commissioner may establish or will establish a 1/12 budget. They probably won't come in and manage that budget unless you don't have a full-on budget by December 1st, as I believe was their due date. They left us with operate. One of the statements they said is operate on what makes the most sense to help kids. And that's what school committee's charge really is to do what's best for children. John McEwen used to preach that to us night and day. Do what's best for kids. Always do what's best for kids. And they finished up with, they encouraged to pay people. Also, there's always outside vendors that you may have to renegotiate some contracts with. Your districts are going to have to pay your vocational schools, because your vocational schools, the deal you made with them was on the enrollment in the school at the beginning of the year, such as their drop dead date might not have been October 1st, but it also could have been. So the Vokes were our commitment to them was based on enrollment. If the towns get to a point, one of the questions was asked, how do the towns disperse the funding to a school district? And one of the questions the answer was, if your town chooses to pay monthly, you go back to your agreement, whether it be your regional agreement or your agreement that when the town runs a single school district through the selectmen. But in a regional agreement, you would go back to your regional agreement. So if the town paid 1/12 monthly, that's how they would pay. If they paid quarterly, that would continue. If they paid twice a year, that would continue. You would look to your regional agreement for that method. And that pretty much wraps it up. Fred, did you hear anything different or George or Jeff, did I not cover it? I took notes as good as I could.
I think that was pretty encapsulating of what Mr. Sullivan said. There's a lot of unknowns out there in a lot of districts. We're not the only one. We are unique in the fact that we haven't moved a budget out of school committee yet. We are one of the few that I saw on the listserv of people commenting that we have not moved a budget out yet. The 112 piece, they were all over the place as far as whether using 2021 numbers or 2020 numbers, or potentially using 2021 minimum local contributions and based on the 2020 budget. But Jay is, if you get to listen to Jay, he's pretty abrupt. He says it like it is. And I think he's in a spot that there's so many pieces that are moving that he can't write things down in stone. Christine Lynch was on the call as well, the person that spoke with us. She also talked about the methodologies. There are some regional school districts that are hurting right now. Some districts are already in a deficit, and that's where Jay talked about E&D. He talked about school transportation costs. He goes, if you gain anything from transportation costs this year, he would throw it into E&D. But right now, the methodology of statutory has been called or is being discussed on Beacon Hill and at DESE right now. So a lot of folks were concerned about what method was going to be used if we went to a 112 budget and what fiscal year we would be using at a 112.
Jay Sullivan also said, yeah, I see it, Fred. Jay Sullivan also said, his words, he's old school. He's hearing rumors of tremendous amounts of discussion. Until he sees it put on paper in front of his face, that's all it is discussion. So all of these different things that you hear, he's hearing probably 10 times what you're hearing. And as he said, till he sees it on paper, legislated as a rule or a law,
doesn't exist.
It strictly is out there.
Yes,
It doesn't exist. Mr. Small.
And the one thing I did gather as well, he did implore school committees to provide a budget no less than 30 days from town meeting. You know, where Whitman's still on for May 4th, you know, we're getting close to that 30-day threshold. He did mention that 45 days before town meeting was statute during that, and I know we've had discussion back and forth on that. And with Christine Lynch, in speaking of the methodology, she referred to going to the board. So I don't know if that be the Board of Education, because the commissioner has the power now, and they would be able to determine. I'm not sure. So whatever, we've done for an assessment methodology, that could change depending upon what happens, through those folks as well.
What I heard is that we should be sending a budget to the towns within 30 days, but the assessment to the towns doesn't necessarily have to be there until April 30th.
Well, I can read you just a quick blurb from August 27th, 2010, and it says Regional School District Budget Process. Timing of the budget. The school committee must adopt the budget 45 days before the first annual town meeting, but no later than March 31st and not earlier than February 1st. With the approval of the majority of the member communities, the superintendent may submit the budget following the notification of the annual local aid distribution. The amount so calculating member assessments. The amount so apportioned for each municipality shall be certified by the regional school district treasurer to the treasurers of the member municipalities within 30 days from the date on which the annual budget is adopted by the regional district school committee, but no later than April 30th. Two methodologies are available to the regional school district for calculating assessments to member municipalities. The methodologies are defined in CMR .01, and then in guidance for regional school districts. There's a statutory assessment method, which we all know, an alternative agreement assessment methodology. We have already voted the statutory method.
Correct.
And then it goes on. I mean, I could read you the whole document, but it's 4 pages long. If you go to the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and look under regional school district budget process, it is 5 pages long, actually, but it spells out every single bit of this budget process.
So if I could just jump in, Bob, one of the
Yes.
questions that I sent to our council, and our council was talking about the assessment. And he's right, when he said the statute says we must issue an assessment from our treasurer to the treasurers no later than April 30th. But the other part of the statute is a budget. The budget and the assessment are two different things. We can throw a budget out there to our communities, and then we can, what I see is talk about what the assessment is looking like. And that means that what we've talked about in the past is lowering or potentially raising the budget number that we've had, that we put out there. So right now, today is April 1st, so we don't hit the March 31st deadline, but I see that is okay. But I think pushing out a budget number and not necessarily the assessment to the towns falls within the statute. And John, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
I agree with everything you said. In fact, I heard Jay Sullivan when he started the entire meeting today. He started with, going to talk about some budget issues. And first and foremost, and I quote, make sure member towns have 45 days to review the budget before town meeting. So yes, you're looking, the state is clearly saying member towns should see a budget 45 days in advance, not their assessments, the budget. And it gives them a chance to review it, not to approve it.
Does everybody understand that? You can shake your head.
To set a budget.
Yes.
Chris?
I understand what's
Chris,
yeah,
go-
I understand what's being said. I guess I'm just looking at the email that I have from our legal counsel that was provided a week ago that seemed to clearly indicate we had until April 30th to adopt the budget.
And I think that's that email I'm looking at, because I went back and forth with Andy today on that, and he's reading the assessment, not the budget. Jay Sullivan's reading the budget, and I'm looking at that document, and Andy basically quoted what is in the regulations for regional school budgets that Bob just read. That's exactly what Andy gave to us. So I think he's right in the fact that we need to certify an assessment by April 30th, but we need to get the two towns a budget number, and then we can work out the assessment through that. And if that changes, if it goes up or down, that assessment would change along with our budget number.
Yeah, so I guess
Also,
I-
go ahead, Chris.
yeah, so I guess I don't know. I guess I'm looking for. I hear a lot being discussed and things that happened, I guess, earlier on a call today that a couple of folks perhaps attended. But I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with, again, looking at an email that was sent to us in last week's package that clearly articulates a timeline that does say we have until April 30th, and now we're basically changing that opinion. I hear what you're saying, Jeff, but I guess if that's the case, I would expect a follow-up email from Andy that would have been shared with all of us in terms of the time.
Okay. I mean, I can double check, but that was clear from Desi today about the 45-day piece. And Andy said, well, what statute was he looking at? And I'm looking at the 45-day to submit the budget. And I think Andy was looking at the assessment piece, but I can clarify again tomorrow.
Well, until we set a budget for the towns to look at, that number can be moved up or down all the way right to town meeting floor. As you know, it's happened before. Somebody at town meeting floor can make a motion to change the budget and fund more or less, either way. And if that motion carries, that's how it goes. Of course, in our case, it would have to be an agreement on both towns. You know, say the assessment was to go up or down, that would have to be agreed upon by both towns. Chris, go ahead. Nobody else don't be afraid to raise your hand. And because again, this is a new process and I'm trying to look at all you guys. Dan,
So
don't forget to speak out because I can't see you. I can now though.
I think Dan raised his hand after me if you didn't see it, Bob, but
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
can I, or you want Dan first or me?
Go ahead, Chris. I recognize you first. Go ahead. And then we'll go to Dan.
So again, I think if we're looking at the intent of the budget process, it's to make sure that the towns have an ability to plan as to what's coming from the school districts. So I do
Correct.
think we've had sufficient discussion with the towns in terms of providing them the numbers so that they understand what needs to be done. I think the larger issue right now is there is so much fluidity as to what's going on. I'm not sure the towns, even with the numbers we provided them, have a good understanding of what their revenues are going to look like and what some of their expenses are going to look like, given what's transpired over the last 30 days. I know there are folks in this meeting that can probably speak to that a lot better than me in terms of impacts to other town departments. Revenues are going to change. There's a whole host of things going on. And I think when I look at the budget process, again, not to beat this thing completely dead, we did talk about trying to get both towns together to understand what some sort of compromise would look like. The spirit of that being to make sure that if we're going to put this in front of the voters of Hanson, and we know there's going to be over $1 million swing due to the change of the assessment methodology, that we feel pretty confident that that budget's going to be approved. To just put a budget out there, have them turn around and say, you know, given where people are struggling financially, we have folks that are losing jobs, and to put in front of them a massive swing, and as part of that massive swing, ask them to absorb what is essentially going to be an override. I don't think that this is the budget that we should be looking at right now. I again think we still need some sort of sense as to what a compromise from the towns would look like. And I haven't heard anything that we're closer to that since the last time we spoke.
Dan, and then Dawn. Dan, then Dawn.
Yeah. I just want to say, I understand about the compromise. That's not our jurisdiction here, Chris. Ours is to get the budget to the towns. And then it's up to the towns, before we certify, it's up to the towns to figure out that pricing or get together, get that compromise. That's not our duty. Our duty is to set a budget so the towns know what they're going to have. You know, it's like Bob was saying, there's three parts here. You got the budget and the two certifications. You don't have to certify the assessment to the towns yet, but we do have to apply a budget to the towns so they know what's coming. They have to have figures to work with. And with the 30-day notice, our town meeting is still scheduled for 5/4. So we're coming up to, we're not going to be meeting that 30-day window. So we need to set a budget, whether both towns want to deal with that or not, or do the compromise. That's not our doing here. Our doing is to set the budget, and there should be level budget. You're not losing anything because we can't afford to be more and more teachers or our school system's gone. As far as I'm concerned, because people are going to go to other districts, school choice-wise, and then we're just going to see more and more less revenue, and our system is going to go downhill. As school committee members, we are to set the budget. What we can do behind the scenes, though, you know, try to get these guys come to a compromise. That's not, you know, for what we have to do, we just have to set the budget, give it to the towns. They start working on it to come up with realistic numbers, whether they can do stuff. Then maybe we can sit back and, like, you know, like we always say, lower it or higher it or whatever we have to do to make adjustments. We're not here to come up with compromises between towns. That's not our duties. That's the duties of whoever in the town has to handle that, whether it's town administrators to get it into the town meeting, to have it voted in those town meetings, whether those compromises will work or not. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to come with the budget. And we've been doing this for like 8-9 weeks now, kicking the can all around. It's not our job to do that. We've been trying to get these guys to get together. It isn't working. They have a bigger fish to fry right now, as we're hearing from people, because of this virus thing that's going around and, you know, decimating probably the town's budgets between the police and fire departments, you know, the supplies they're dwindling off on. So they have their issues, but we have to come up with the budget. We have to think about the students. That's the whole thing here, the students. We have to get them educated, and we just set the budget. And if the towns don't want to do it, that's not us. That comes back to us, and we reassess everything. But we can't just keep ignoring setting the budget. We're already past one deadline to give a town the meeting, for the town meeting. So, we just have to come up with a budget tonight. We've been doing this for 8, 9 weeks. We're not going to get anywhere with a compromise at a school committee meeting. We don't have to push the assessment to them right now, as I believe that comes up till 45 days, but we're kind of up to on 30 days from a town meeting already. And you have to allow these towns to start working on that budget.
Thank you, Dan. Dawn, you were next.
Think if there was a compromise, they would have come forward already and shared any information they had. I haven't heard that. Right now, we owe it to the teachers who are working their tails off and to the students who are doing their best to participate. So the budget is our main focus, and nothing short of, the level services that we have right now, which isn't even enough. So we owe it to the teachers to set a budget tonight.
So,
Jeff, then Fred.
so just to jump in, I know one of the tasks you gave me last week was to meet with the 2 town administrators. I did reach out to both Mr. Stanbrook and Mr. Lynham. We had a meeting scheduled for Monday at 1. Mr. Stanbrook is out ill Monday, Tuesday, and today. So Mr. Lynham and I decided not to speak independently, as the task was to speak jointly. So I was not able to meet with the town administrators per the direction of the committee.
Everybody here?
Yeah.
Fred, you were next.
Mr. Small would like to make a motion to set the FY21 budget at $55,040,238. I believe that's our required amount.
That is the required amount without the 4 teachers.
Correct.
Mr. Boyce seconds.
Okay, discussion.
Um,
Fred?
I just think that we need to set a budget. I cannot see any way, shape, or form, or in any world, how we would set a budget that would be cutting anything from what's required. If our administration tells us that is the bare bones of what they need, and other than that, it's bodies, and there's no fat in there, there's nothing in there, and we've been over that a few times, then I think that's what we need to support, and that's what we need to send to the towns.
Dawn?
I think it's important we need to add the 4 teachers. I know that Whitman FinCom met last night. They have a placeholder. They're able to fund the assessment, which includes 4 additional teachers. I'd like to make a motion to amend.
Well, you didn't vote on the first one. You didn't vote on the first one.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead, Dawn, I'm listening.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the budget to $55,320,238.
Do I hear a second? Hearing no second, that doesn't carry. We're back to Mr. Small's number of $55,040,238. I have a motion and a second. Continued discussions.
Move to vote.
Anyone else? Give me a second here. I wrote it all down and now I lost the paper I wrote it on. Okay. Mr. Jones. Mike Jones. Can you hear me, Mike? Unmute your iPad. Okay, it's unmuted. Mike?
I'm voting no.
Mr. Small?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
No.
Dawn? Ally Taylor? Mr. Scriven? Chris, you're muted also. Unmute yourself. You have to unmute your device. Okay,
Wasn't letting me unmute, sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah, I vote yes.
Mr. Cullity,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien. Robbie, I think you're muted.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard
No.
and Mr. Hayes votes yes. I have 4 noes and 5 yeses.
Bob, I'm sorry,
Yes.
what was Ally Taylor's vote, please?
I didn't have Ally Taylor. She's not here. Is that you,
Oh.
Cindy, that was just talking?
Michelle.
That's
Oh,
Michelle.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Ally Taylor is not participating. I wasn't sure if she checked in, so I kept her on roll call. But she is not participating. So I have a 5-4. Where does that put us, Michelle?
It doesn't pass.
Two-thirds.
Right, so that doesn't carry either. Mr. Small,
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider.
someone want to
Second.
second that? Seconded by? Who seconded it? Remember, it's a roll call.
Dan.
I'm sorry, Dan, thank you. It was seconded by Dan. I'm only doing this over so Michelle can hear us because she's on here too. Michelle isn't in the room with us. She's remote also. And yes, we are observing social distancing. We're about 15 feet apart. Okay. Mr. Jones, this is on the reconsideration of the original number that Mr. Small proposed of $55,040,238.
We're voting on the same exact thing we just voted on before, right?
Yes.
So does everybody understand that this is a reconsideration of the same vote? It was 5-4. It has to be 2/3. Mr. Scriven?
Yeah, that was
discussion.
my question. We are open for discussion, right?
Yes.
Well, I maybe I could kick it to the nose and see what we could do to get a budget today.
Well, we please don't vote up front when we're discussing.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
So Bob, as a point of order, can the
Um,
motion be reconsidered by?
Yes, as long as it's done, as long as it's done by a person who voted in the affirmative on the same night. That's why we couldn't do the reconsideration on the methodology, if you remember correctly, and Michelle went over that with us. And Michelle, jump in at any time if you think I'm incorrect. It has to be done at the meeting or the next meeting, and it has to be done by a person for reconsideration who voted in the affirmative. Is that correct, Michelle? Are you there, Michelle?
She's muted, but I believe it's on the majority side.
Yep, that's correct as far as I read.
Yes, that's what I thought. So does that answer your point of order?
Yes, so
Chris?
so the part I was trying to clarify is it can be reconsidered by the non-majority side, the non-affirmative side, or the non-carrying side, I guess is the question.
It has to be on the
Okay.
yes side to make it
Thank you.
simple. So it would be on the majority side, actually, well, on the yes side, if there's more yeses than nos. So, further discussion before we go to the reconsideration that Mr. Small made, and again, I'm being redundant because you guys are not sitting right in front of me, so to speak. It's $55,040,000. I see you, Dawn, $238. Dawn, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're voting on the same dollar amount?
Mr. Small, to be reconsidered for the same dollar amount. Yes, Mr. Small.
And I would just implore everyone to find it in your hearts to be able to send a budget. The agreement or whatever the two towns do, that's separate from what we're sending for a budget. And I can't see chopping our budget and making our system just decimating it. It was bad enough what happened last year. I'm begging everyone, please.
Dawn?
I would say now more than ever, we need those 4 teachers in the fall. Students are having a loss of learning right now. It's unacceptable to have class sizes of those sizes, especially in 1st and 2nd grade, for those early learners learning to read.
Mr. Small?
The only issue that I have with that, Don, if our administration had come to us and said that that was something required and they absolutely had to have it, I have to side on the fact that they're the experts and they're the ones telling us what they absolutely most positively need. And I think it's an absolute most positive need year. And that's where I go. Believe me, I feel very strongly, about class size and being able to do the best that we can for the kids. At the same time, if they identified that over a curriculum, say, then we'd be having the discussion maybe about a curriculum. But this is what our experts have identified as to what our needs are. I got to go with what the experts tell us or advise us. That's why they're in the positions they're in.
Right. And for the FY20 budget, these teachers were part of that budget, but then the budget got cut and those teachers got cut. So at one point, those teachers were required as part of the budget. So
Okay.
Go
now,
ahead, Fred.
right now,
Are you done, Dawn? Wait a
do
minute.
you-
Are you done, Dawn? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Are you done, Dawn?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Small?
I mean, if you want to go down the list, we can talk about what's required. Okay, what we're doing for students today is horrible. Okay, and the position that we put our great teachers in and having to teach behind the 8 ball is not right. It's not fair, but it's life, and that's what we have to deal with. And right now we have 2 towns. One town can afford things, and the other town is going to be struggling like heck. Okay, even if they can come up with a compromise and one town can help out another, they're going to be struggling like heck to make it. And we have to be cognizant of. Now, if administration wants to tell us that they feel they're better off to do this than that, please speak up and tell us. Because I'll support it 110%. But those are the people that we hired. Those are the professionals. And that's who we have to listen to, I think. I wish we could add everything. I wish we could add everything back that we've lost over the years. We just can't.
Dawn?
Bob, I have
Go
a
ahead.
question in regards to governance. So the budget is our policy. We set policy. So I understand, I respect the superintendent's recommendations and the budget he's put forward and what he is saying is required. But we do set this policy, and I do have an obligation that I feel towards these students and the teachers that are going to be put in these classrooms in the fall after potentially losing 4 months of learning. So I guess that's sort of some directive I'm looking for. And if Jeff has any comments, but budget is our policy.
If we're talking what we really need, go down to the recommended, every one of them. But I was trying to be realistic too, where we are with times. I just need a budget.
I see you, Chris.
Because my teachers are anxious. We're all anxious right now that we've been talking about a number for 3 months, and we have this out, and the first vote of the committee was a no budget. So I'm looking at not adding because the committee voted it down. That must be a higher number, and George and I are cutting right now, and we're looking for direction of what to cut to make us get a budget out of this meeting tonight.
Chris Scriven?
So I guess my question is to the, what was it, the 4 no's or 3 no's?
We had 4
Right,
no's.
so I'd just like some, if they don't mind sharing the rationale for the no vote, and if they have any idea on how we could get a budget tonight. I know earlier they were talking, I think it was Jeff, if we set a budget, then the towns can negotiate and we can even, change. But I just think we need to think as strongly as we can about moving forward at this point. And I'm just curious what maybe.
All right. All the no members, you don't have to answer and rationalize your vote. He's just asking this if anyone would want to volunteer, and Chris has his hand up. Thank you,
So
Chris.
I think
Scriven.
I'm trying to
Thank
do,
you.
or trying to make sure we do the same thing that everyone else on the committee has said. I'm trying to make sure that we put education of this district, including the students and children, the students and the teachers first. And I think if we just, again, kick the can down the road and we say, all right, we're going to just slam through a budget here on the premise that Whitman is going to have that town meeting in 4 weeks. And we go to the voters of Hanson and we say, here's the budget, right? And it's going to be an increase of over $1 million, which is going to trigger a requirement for an override. I think we have an opportunity to come together right now over the next week. We should have already been there, come together, put together a budget with a compromise that we can put in front of both towns that we feel good will be supported, opposed to just putting through a budget that when it goes to the town of Hanson is going to require an override vote just to provide level services. And if it doesn't pass, what is that cut going to look like, Jeff? the 1/12 budget is going to become the reality. I think we have an opportunity if we get the towns to come together to actually get this hashed out now, instead of just kicking this thing down the road another 2 weeks. We're going to be having the same conversation right before town meeting about changing the budget. We are there. We have to get the towns to come together. It sounds like they're willing to talk. Sounds like Mr. Stanbrook's been out sick. I don't see how we can't get there now.
Chris, just before we go to Chris Scriven, I just got an email that Mr. Stanbrook will be in tomorrow. I got an email. I mean, not an email, I got a text message. I'm sorry. That he will be in tomorrow. So Chris, you had your hand up, Chris Scriven?
Thank you. This budget is what Jeff has deemed to be a required budget with no extras in it at all. So I'm trying to imagine a scenario, Chris, that we, would vote as a committee for something less than this. I understand that Hanson and Whitman, and believe me, I've been hoping that they would have worked something out by now, but ultimately that is in their court. And if I vote no on this required budget, then that means I'm going to be voting at some point on a budget that's less than what required. And I don't want to do that right now. I'd rather come as low as we can for, level service and what Jeff has deemed to be required, and then take it to the towns and say, this is our level service budget. What can you do to compromise and fund the schools the way, we should? I guess that's my rationale. If I
Mr. O'Brien, thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chris. So, Chris, I'll just put it there for me, and I'll let Mr. Jones and Mr. Howard give their version of it. While I agree with the $55 million number, it is that, I got to be honest, Hanson's not going to do an override, especially now. Things changed. If we went back to the 60-40 split or the alternative method, well, maybe. Or if the towns came to us so they figure it out tomorrow that they're going to do a 50-50 or do something else, maybe. But I'm just looking. While I agree with it, I don't want to cut anything in the schools whatsoever. It's that even before everything went on in the world, it was going to be a hard pill to swallow to get Hanson residents to vote an override. Where now, I don't think they're going to. So for me, it isn't so much the $55 million number. It's the assessment method and having to do that. And I don't want to rehash all that, but I'm just giving you where I come from on it. So thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Just to piggyback on Rob's thing, and Jeff, it's no point are we saying what you are presenting us is not correct. And we are not looking for you to make any cuts, or I am not. We just want to be able to sell to the town of Hanson something that they're going to vote yes on. Because if there's an override or this huge amount of money and they're looking at, oh, what did you add? And we say, oh, nothing. We can't sell that. So I think we just need to come. I mean, the town.
I see it, Dan. All set, Mike?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Cullity, thank you for your patience.
I'd like to know the number, if we were going to, how many people we have to cut if we don't get a budget passed and we go on the 1/12 of the 2020 budget. Was that number like 47 staff members?
48.
48.
That's what we're looking at right now. 48 people will be cut from the school system if we don't get this budget. At least vote on a budget to pass to the towns. It's up to the towns to vote whether they're gonna support the school system or not. I mean, I understand what's going on, why the Hanson folks don't want to do it, but we have to pass a budget. If the towns can't vote, if we don't give them something to vote on, there's nothing to vote on. And we automatically going to default to a 1/12 come June 30th. And that's 48 people because we're going to go off of last year's budget. And that's not what we're here to do. I understand you're looking for a compromise. Compromise isn't going to happen. You're going to have to go to probably an override. But we have to set a budget. We already know what the level set is. Unless we want to say, let's cut out 40 teachers or something and drop that number down to make it easier for you to vote on. I mean, level set is what we should be required to be passing on. It's up to the town floors to do it. And that's all I got to say. I don't want to be seeing 47 people, 48 people getting cut by default. Robbie has his hand.
Anyone else? Robbie? Go ahead.
And I'm just going to throw it up there. Change the assessment method tonight. Change the assessment method tonight.
You can't.
One of the things, folks, that we've always done is pass the budget out of committee, and then the towns have the number, they marinate on the number, we speak, and they give us the number that they can afford. Then we've come back to the committee, much like we did last year, and the committee said, well, we have to lower this to this, to this, to this. And then we gave them the final assessment right before town meeting, or the final budget number. We can push a number out tonight, one or the other, push it out tonight. And as I meet with Frank and John and FinCom and such, that's the negotiation piece, more formal than the negotiations that's been going on. That budget number can change in this committee up until the time of town meeting. And we haven't set an assessment because we can set an assessment up till April 30th. That's our drop dead date to give the towns an assessment. But they have to have a number to kind of play around in their FinComs. We can't change the assessment methodology right now because we voted that on. That's what we can't do. But that doesn't mean that doesn't give us an opportunity over the next 30 days to come up or to have the town speak formally on what they can afford or what they can't afford. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and I know in Hanson, the issue of Hanson not passing a budget because of the increase, I'm concerned that on the flip side, Whitman won't accept a budget where there's cuts to that. And if Hanson doesn't come up with the budget, or if we give the number to Whitman that Hanson can afford, that will probably be cuts to the district. And I don't know if the town of Whitman would support that budget. So it's we're kind of stuck right in the middle to try to figure it out. But what I do hear is we need to support a budget. Thank you, Mike, for saying you don't want us to cut. I don't want to cut either. And I tried to put forth a budget to this committee that wasn't ideal for us, that worked for kids. We do need those 4 teachers. There's no question. But in the state that we're in right now, economically, with the unknowns, that is the recommended piece is something that I'm true to. I'm afraid of losing pieces of that. Our tech department was cut, and we are struggling there. So if I can get the recommended piece of the budget today out, and then we can discuss what the towns can afford in an assessment, that might be a future meeting, and with input from Mr. Stanbrook and from Mr. Lynham. But I think it is imperative that we get a number out to the communities, because we can always revisit the budget. And we've done that in the past, all the way up to, and it's usually been a cut, which I don't want to go, but we've revisited up to almost town meeting floor.
Before we go to Mr. Cullity, then Mr. Howard, I'll rein in why I voted yes. I tend to agree with Jeff. We can change the number all the way to town meeting. Changing the assessment method it can't be done. Now, after hearing today's meeting and hearing between Jay Sullivan and Mrs. Marshall say the statutory method may be under scrutiny as we speak, and it could change itself, at least by setting a number, it gives the two towns the number. Now, the negotiations that you're talking about that we're not seeing, they can negotiate on that number because they have a base by having the number and say, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then the assessments come to the town by the 30th of the month. And that can change it, but at least it gives them the opportunity to say, this is the drop dead number. Now, how do we get somewhere close, and then maybe it can get readjusted. But without having that number to start with, they're at just exactly like we were, as Dan Cullity said 9 weeks ago. And that was my
Excuse
thought
me, Chair
process.
Hayes?
Yes.
It's Allie. I'm sorry. I'm so late getting on.
Ally, do you understand where we're at? I think part of the problem now is, though, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, Ally did not vote on the first time we went through. Can she vote on the reconsideration?
Of course, you just joined the meeting.
Okay. I'm just asking. I don't want anything to make something go haywire if we're not doing something 100% totally the way Robert's Rules of Order goes. So you're sure of that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So Ally, do you understand where this discussion's going before I go back to Mr. Cullity, who has been very patient with me?
No, I'm sorry. Would you mind recapping that for me real quick?
Dan, are you all right letting me recap it and then go to you?
Okay.
Okay, the first vote, Ally, was on the required FY21 budget of $55,040,238. That is without the 4 teachers, and it was the required first number. The vote went 4 noes, 5 yeses, so it didn't carry. Mr. Small, we had asked for reconsideration on the vote because we only had 9 people. You have since joined the meeting. We have been bantering back and forth on setting the number and how it should be set or where it should go, and allowing the towns and what the school committee's charge is to be setting a budget. We have till the 30th of April to set the assessments. We are simply setting a budget number this evening. So the reconsideration is to reconsider the first vote on $55,040,238. Any questions, Ally? And then I'm going right to you, Dan. I'm sorry,
Nope,
but
I'm
this
good.
is-
Thank you.
You got it, Ally?
Yep.
Dan, go ahead.
Just quickly, to reiterate what Jeff had just said and what Bob had said. We need to pass the budget so they can go into that compromise stage. They don't have formal numbers. They can't really negotiate. We're not, by putting this budget out there, like they both said, we can keep going at it till the 30th. But we need to give them something. If we don't give them something, your negotiations compromise is never going to happen. Because why would Whitman go to Hanson and say, what are we negotiating on? There's no firm set number. That's why I've been saying, our job is to put it down and let them vote. Or let them compromise. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Chris, you were next. Chris Howard.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is some of the craziest logic I think I've ever heard, right? We had to vote the assessment methodology back on December 11th so the towns could work with the number, we could get to a compromise. Here we are, 5 months later. We sat at a meeting 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and I heard Randy and Laura both say, we need a number. And I heard them also say, we got your number. So now we're saying today, April 1st, when we have an email from council that says we have until April 30th, when I think we all realize the town meetings are probably going to get pushed back, we have to take a vote tonight to set a budget so the towns can have numbers that they've already told us they've had for weeks. I don't understand the logic at all, frankly. So.
You done, Chris? Mr. Small, I see you.
You know, and just to reiterate, I can't see in any lifetime setting a budget that would be less than the required amount from our administration. I just can't fathom that. And, you know, we might as well just do it, rip the Band-Aid and get it done and give the towns the numbers to work with. I wish we could go higher, Dawn. You're probably correct. I mean, I wish we could do more. I just feel that, you know, we have to be cognizant, but I can't see doing something, you know, anything less than required. Just want to get my 2 cents in again, I guess.
Anyone else before we move to the vote? This is the vote on the reconsideration. No one else? I'm looking, Mr. Cullity, you're good. Mr. Jones, Dawn? I don't see any hands up. If I'm missing you, speak up. Okay, Mr. Small.
Mr. Small votes yes.
Mr. Jones,
Vote no.
Mr. Boyce,
Yes.
Dawn, Ms.
Yes.
Byers. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, make me say it twice.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm making you say it twice. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Ally Taylor,
Yes.
Chris Scriven,
Yes.
Ian Cullity,
Yes.
Rob O'Brien,
No.
Chris Howard,
No.
Bob Hayes, yes.
Yes.
We have a 7-3 vote, so we have a majority. So the budget assessment,
Just the budget.
the budget, I'm sorry, yes, the budget has been set at $55,040,238. The assessments to the town, so no one is mistaken, will not be set until a later date. When is our next school committee meeting?
The 8th,
The 8th of
April,
April,
a week from tonight.
a week from tonight. So take all of the input that everyone gets from people in town, bring it to the 8th meeting. Keep in mind, you can change the budget number. You can't change the methodology. You can change the budget number. So keep that in mind. Does anyone have any questions before I make a motion, entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. Made by Mr.
Second.
Small, made by Mr. Cullity. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Bob Hayes, yes. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven had his
I'm
hand up.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
It can wait.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yes.
Well,
It can wait.
If we adjourn,
It's just
Okay.
a question. It's just on this Zoom, you know, it can wait.
okay. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Ally Taylor?
Yes.
Don Byers?
Yes.
Steve Boyce?
Yes.
Mr. Small? You're
Yes.
voted. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
See you a week from this evening. And we'll be doing it Zoom because as you know what's going on. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.
You as well.
Chris?
Thank you.